Welcome to Alpha Marketing, your go-to resource for unlocking the full potential of your small to medium-sized business. Hosted by Aaron Shishilla, CEO of Wolfpack Advising. Now, let's learn how to dominate your market.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Marketing Alpha. Today, I know I say every single time, we have an awesome podcast, but today's a special one. In this special episode, I'm sitting down with the man, the myth, the legend, my dad, John Shishilla, a true marketing alpha in Brevard County, Melbourne, Florida, who's not built one, but now going on to 3 successful home service-based companies, a home inspection business, a pest control company, and now a roofing business, alongside of all the many other things that he's involved in, because he not only does that, but we'll try to stick to one particular lane for this podcast. I know we might dive into some of the other things he's gotten his hands into. We'll talk about how he built each one, how he dominates his market without massive ad budgets, and we'll talk about the lessons he's learned along the way. So if you're a service-based business owner, if you're looking to start multiple different companies, this is the absolute man to talk to. So, welcome, John. Welcome, my dad.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so happy you're here.
It's good to talk to you again.
It feels like it was yesterday.
It does. It feels like yesterday.
Obviously, we have a lot of different things we want to get into. And to kind of start us off, I've shared this in a couple other podcasts with other people. But to kind of give the background to everybody in terms of how you got started into home inspections, I want to talk about that. But I also want to just highlight for everybody that key moment that's at least in my mind of the moment that I got fired from my job, why I got fired from it, and what you said to me in the car ride to the grocery store of which I was getting fired from on that day, if you remember, because I do.
I don't remember exactly.
You don't?
You have to tell that story. I can't
Okay.
do that.
So we're gonna rewind a little bit. We'll talk about that, and then we're gonna rewind fully and get started into like how you started in home inspection. So for those listeners that don't actually know, I would have never been here if it wasn't for the home inspection business, and obviously I never would have been born if it wasn't for him, for John, my dad. But if you don't remember, I'll refresh your memory on what happened. I got fired from Publix. Long story short, I got into a fight that actually wasn't a fight. I got punched in the nuts by the crazy guy, right? You remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Okay. But on the car ride over to me getting fired, which I wasn't 100% certain that I was going to get fired that day, but I don't know why you were particularly driving me because I had a car, so I don't remember. But we knew it was probably happen, and I was getting called in for a weird reason. And you said to me, well, maybe after this you come work for me. And I was just like, well, I don't know. We'll see. But it wasn't, I think it was later that night that you offered me a job. That moment has just stuck with me. And I'll never forget that particular moment, because if it wasn't for any of that, I wouldn't be here. So anyway, I wanted to start with that little fun story, but let's rewind further. How did you actually get involved in the home inspections in the first place and starting your first company?
So, as you know, I'm a contractor, so I was involved in construction. So your numbers are off. I actually had a construction company before I had the home inspection company.
Thank you.
So I've had multiple companies, and I was doing work, working with a guy, and then I'll give you the name of the company, because he was, let's just say his tactic was to negotiate a deal, get you to do the work, and then renegotiate before he paid you. And I found that pretty disgusting. Like he would always want to renegotiate, say, oh no, you're charging me too much. And he everything to him was a negotiation instead of just that a deal's a deal and get it done. So when I split off from him, from the construction company, we're building homes, custom homes, I started Honor Construction, just because he didn't do it the right way. Everything he did was, he just didn't want to do it the right way, and I wanted it done the right way. So started Honor Construction, and of course, what happened in the moment I'm out on my own, the market falls apart. There's nobody's building new homes anymore. Remodels are done, refis are done. Everybody's upside down, and I walked into a class at the University of Florida for my continuing education, and a lady walked in talking about wind mitigation inspections, and she gave me a card, and I called her and wound up doing wind mitts for her for the original My Safe Florida Home program. So that's how I got started. I started doing wind mitts as a contractor because home inspectors weren't licensed in Florida back then. And wind mitts led to 4 points. 4 points led to home inspections. Home inspections led to more stuff.
So in those early days, what did it look like from like growing your business standpoint? And were you always thinking about expansion or like what you wanted to have in the next, 5 to 10 years, or what was your mindset at? Or were you just like trying to just survive or what?
So originally, your mother will even say this, we used to measure everything we bought and every dollar we spent and how many wind mitigations would I have to do to pay for it. So we measure things in wind mitigation. And I know that sounds weird, but like if you wanted a new TV, how many wind mitts would I have to do? If we're going to dinner, how many wind mitts would I have to do? So everything was measured in wind mitts. And that started early on because your mother was in a similar industry in the real estate. She was a title agent. And at some point she got laid off. And I said, well, I'll just do a few more wind mitts. It'd be fine, And that really is what started the company, just starting marketing from day one. When the My Safe Florida program ended and I had a few people that were using me, my own agents were using me for wind mitts. And I just said, I'll go market and we'll go from there. And literally I didn't stop marketing until I couldn't market anymore because I was too busy.
And what were you doing for marketing in those early days? And then what switched from you to where you weren't? Because like in the early days, you said you talked about like doing wind mitts to buy a TV. Like what switched to be like, okay, now I have a business that I'm going to run it in the business and like grow the business.
So I was always worried that, when you start with wind mitts, that it wasn't going to be enough one day. Like people wouldn't need them anymore. That was always the thing. Like what would replace me, or would I get them all done? Like, all right, there's only, there's 600,000 people live in my county, and I've inspected a lot of those homes. Well, once you inspect them, you need to do it again, So I was always worried about, would I run out of business? And with that mindset, it was always, what else could I do to bring in money to expand the business and keep growing? And worrying about running out of business and worrying about one day I'd wake up and the phone would stop ringing, and then what do you do? So with that mindset, it was always one of the things I always said after after the wind mitts were kind of flowing was, I got this inspection, I need the next 10. And I still say that to my team. So, and I know it's pretty cliche, but we make sure we do a good enough job where we get referrals from that inspection. Because once you see us do our job, and I'll give you an example from today or yesterday if you want down the road, we know, you'll love us that much that you'll use us again. And so I just need to get you to convince other people to use me and give me a chance. And once I have that chance, we'll keep growing.
And besides that, did you do anything else for marketing?
So originally in the day, if you remember our first website, it was HTML, and I made that. I was pretty good at website stuff, and I made the original one. I converted that to HTML5 at some point, and had some fancy stuff on there, and that was great. But marketing was, I would go visit people for wind mitts, and 4 points it was insurance agents or real estate offices, get them flyers or cards or notepads or pens or whatever. But literally, when I would leave to go do an inspection, if I was driving past an office that I didn't have, I would stop at that office, and I would talk to somebody. Now you got to rewind that. Remember, that was before cell phones were kind of new. Not everybody had one. Real estate agents still were in the office. Insurance agents were still in their office. So you would catch them there. And we would do that. And I literally would do it on the way to inspections and on the way back until my schedule was so full I couldn't do it.
So you did that so much that your schedule got full. What do you think, like, what was the turning point of where it was like, okay, I need to hire and now I'm growing this business and I'm doing more home inspections? Like, what did that first couple steps look like?
So the first couple steps was I was tired. And, I waited too long to hire. And I know that, now you look back and go, wow, did I wait too long to hire? One of the smartest early moves I made, though, was I let somebody else answer the phone because that created a better schedule for me because I wouldn't say yes. The person, answer the phone would say, oh, he could do it on Thursday, not today, or, he can do it next week, or we could do that at 3, we can't do it at 4. So my schedule got better, and once my schedule got better, I could do more. So that actually helped me early on, and it gave a much more professional look in my mind. Like it's just not chucking a truck. So that was a
Hmm.
smart move there. And then I started hiring when I couldn't do it all. Like there was when you talk about home inspections, I would come home, I was tired, and I'd try to write my reports, and I'd be tired, and then I'd get up the next morning and do it again, and I was motivated, but after a period of time, you gotta be able to take a break, you gotta be able to walk away from it. So I hired assistants, people that would do the stuff that I didn't want to do, whether it was drive for me or check outlets, doors, and windows. And you did that when you were 14. For me, you went out a couple inspections. I know I did one in Oviedo one time, and you were pretty young. And I'm like, okay, take this tester, go plug it in every one, and tell me which ones don't light up this way. Open and close every door, make sure it locks and latches. Open and close every window, and that alone saved me. Having an assistant could save you an hour per inspection. And then when I look at it like that, I go, well, then if they can write part of the inspection, I don't have to do it. I mean, if they just fill out the appliances, I don't have to do it. So by doing that, and of course, as you know, you learn what I'm doing, and you start to be able to start doing more and more and more. And as you get to do more, I can do less, or we both can do more together, meaning more inspections.
After you hired the first couple people, you had more of a business, and at what point did you think like, okay, now I have a more growing business. I'm no longer thinking of like wind mitigations. I have a couple team members now. What were you doing for marketing at that particular point, if anything?
So I became a much more because I could step back every day. More of my marketing was directly involved in my business, still is to this day. Meaning, I could go sponsor events and show up. I could, as I call it, shaking babies and kissing hands or whatever. So if I show up on an inspection, I'll talk to the agents. A lot of times I'm doing less of the work and doing more of the smoozing, whatever you want to call it, and answering some of the complicated questions. So it allows my guys to do the job and not be interrupted, so they can be, as you know, when you try to do an inspection, people interrupt you all the time. So I run that interference for them. At the same time, yeah, I still do inspections like by myself, but more the marketing aspect of it, meaning I'll show up to events, that's kind of thing. We started to get into the digital stuff, as you know, because that's how you got involved. I knew the website stuff was taken off, and I needed somebody else to do it because it was getting more complicated, and I didn't have time. Just like I didn't have time to stop at offices anymore. So as you know, I hired a company to do my website and SEO, and it was a total flop. Their website was terrible. They couldn't get the color. They couldn't even get the colors right. Never mind a template or SEO, and the SEO was terrible. And I was going to dive back into SEO because, as you know, SEO is not something you can walk away from for a year and then come back into it and go, I know everything. You don't. Hiring that company was, all right, I'm just going to throw money at it and see what happens. And obviously, that didn't work, and that's where you stepped in, and you're like, oh, I'll do some of this stuff. But you realize you can't do everything, so you pick what you're good at and do that, and I let other people do what they're good at. So there's certain things in my company I don't do at all, because as they say, I hire for my weaknesses. I'm a great inspector, but I'm not as good as some. But I have team members that do other things better than me.
Do you think that obviously we're talking about home inspections mainly right now, but for like a lot of people starting their businesses, whether it's a home service based business, handyman, whatever, do you think a lot of people, they're one of the biggest mistakes that they make is they still answer their own phones and they have like a difficult time? Because I know I talk to a lot of people that still answer their own phones, and maybe they hire other inspectors first or they hire marketers first, but they're still answering their own phones. How do you feel about that?
So I would say it would depend on your skill set, what you like to do, and what you're good at. As you know, your mother's a super organizer, so put her in my office to organize the office and organize the phone stuff was a smart move. Not to say I can't do it, but she was better at it. I mean, you did it for a while and you hated it for, same kind of thing. It's just not the funnest thing in the world to answer the phone. Some people, I have team members that love it, and that's what they do. It's, they're happy with that. So perfect example is brought your mother on a couple inspections. One of them she ran out of the house and said, "I'm never doing this again," because she found a dead rat in the tub. So we still had to finish the inspection, but I had to do it alone. So she's like, "I'll do anything you want, just don't ask me to go on inspections." So you hire for what hire for your weaknesses. And I know that's again a little cliche, but if you're not going to be good at it, find somebody who is, and let them do it. SEO, was a perfect example. I mean, I would have had to devote a lot of time. Unfortunately for me, that time would have been, when you took over, would have been at night and when I was not working. So, by allowing you to do that, allowed me to focus on other things.
So to summarize, like, your marketing and how you grew the home inspection business, would it be fair to say that a lot of it was, like, I guess you could say, the OG form of marketing and, like, relationship building and doing a good job?
Well, yeah, I mean that was the start, but that certainly was nowhere near where we got busiest. I don't, right now I don't claim to be, obviously the super, social marketer or the super, SEO marketer or website or anything like that. But I think those are all components that are guaranteed I need. But the OG, I would say, is really the biggest thing is I go back to, if I can convince you that to love what I did for you, you will tell other people. And then you are my marketeer. So, and I'll give you an example, and I said I was going to say this, but I'll give you an example. So the roofing business. As you know, I opened a roofing company, and we've been doing some roofing. And, I'm working on, stuff today with permitting and things like that. We did a roof for a guy, and you'll know Mr. Carr. We did Mr. Carr's one of his rental homes, and we showed up. We did a preliminary report, and we wrote his estimate, and we put together his contract, all this other stuff. And he just like, "Where do I sign? I want you. You're professional." And we talked about a couple of different things, and then I kept him in the loop the whole way. Meaning, he got pictures when we're doing the roof. He knew when the permit was applied for. He knew when the permit was approved. He knew when the notice of commencement was filed. So he knew every step of the way, but we also made sure his tenant knew. Like, hey, we're going to be here such and such day. We're going to be here on Thursday, and we showed up on Thursday. The dumpster showed up like we said. The material showed up, we said. We showed up, we started the work. His tenant has now told two of my different team members that he was so impressed, he wants to write a review. He didn't even hire us. But he's going to make sure he knows. He goes, "You left the yard clean. You left the driveway clean. You told me everywhere what you're going to do, and everything happened exactly like you said it was." He goes, for him, who had no stake in the game, he was just impressed. So if I can impress him, never mind the guy who hired me, well, that's what I need, because now I got two people marketing for me on that one job.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't think about that, and maybe come to Wolfpack or go to another marketing agency expecting wonderful things. But if they're not doing a good job at the end of the day, like, it's going to be hard to just get the natural word of mouth from that.
It certainly hurts, and I say this because everybody says they're the best inspector in the world. Well, the best inspector in the world doesn't sell inspections. Sorry, you think you're great, and you may be a wonderful inspector, but it doesn't mean you're going to sell inspections. There's a difference between being good, being the best. We all know that. But you have to be a good marketeer, meaning it's not one and done. It's not like, just tell them I'm going to be 20 minutes late. That, as you know, does not happen in my company. I mean, if we are, something really, really bad went wrong. I'll give you another example from last week. Had a client. We had a small house. We started losing assistants because we're slower. Assistants are hourly and they don't get their hours, so we lost a couple of them. So we decided not to replace them right away. So if we have a small house, we'll send one guy by himself, which I don't like to do. It was 1,120 square feet. It was in Port St. John, so it was a good distance away. He goes out, he does the inspection. I don't even know if I told you this story. He does the inspection, and it's his second inspection of the day. He did the first one with a bunch of other, several other inspectors because it was large. And he's there. It's remodeled. It should be easy. It should be out in an hour and a half, no problem. Report pretty much done in 2 hours, easily. But it's an $886 inspection. So when I think about that, it's 1,120 square feet, and we're making $886. And he's going to be done in 2 hours. Guaranteed. Win-mint 4-point thing. So, all right, we're good to go. He shows up. He starts doing the inspection. It's a vacant house. He walks around the outside. He gets stung by a wasp while climbing through the bushes. You didn't think nothing of it. He keeps moving. Who's not been stung doing a home inspection or working around the outside of a house? It happens, especially if you're going to climb through bushes. A few minutes later, he wasn't feeling too good. So he's like, you know what? I'm going to go inside. I'm going to splash some water on my face. And this is, I don't even know if you know Chris. Walking down the hallway, he passed out. Hit his face on the wall, hurt his ribs, split his head open. Now, okay, he wakes up. He's out. He wakes up and he calls me and says, hey, I don't think I could finish this inspection. Now, I didn't know any of this. I mean, I'm going, okay, I'm on an inspection. I was on my own too. I said I could be there about 30 minutes. And he goes, yeah, I don't think I could finish this. I said, okay, no problem. I'll be there in about 30 minutes. You okay? Do you need 911? No. On the way there, I talked to another inspector, not from my company, and he was driving by that area. He was literally coming right past that exit. I said, hey, do you want this inspection? And he's like, sure. It was Sean Fogarty. So you worked for him for a day. And so I gave him the inspection. Him and his wife did it, knocked it out. $886 for a 1,120 square foot inspection. Good deal, right? When I showed up, Chris was a mess. There was no way he had to go to the emergency room immediately. His blood pressure dropped. Of course, took him to the emergency room. But that client called and said, thank you for taking care of me and making sure my job got done. Despite the fact that your team member had to go to the hospital and one of you had to take him, you still got the job done, and I'm happy with it. Mm-hmm. And I know that because the next day for lunch, I was talking to Sean. We went to lunch, and the guy called him because we made sure he had Sean's number. And he paid us for the inspection. We paid Sean. And we told him, hey, if you have any questions or problems, Sean actually said, if you have any problems, call John. But if you have any questions, call me. So, but he was impressed with the fact that we could just pull things together and get it done. So having that teamwork really helps. And he'll never forget it because he's going to buy this house and realize the guy passed out in his living room or his hallway and was bleeding all over the place. And he couldn't even tell because we cleaned up the mess.
Segueing out of the passing out of team members, let's talk about the expansion to pest control real quick.
Sure.
So you got the inspection business going strong. Obviously, if a team member passes out, you'll have your competitor step in and make sure your client's taken care of. What made you think pest control is the next venture? What's the overlap? What's the synergy? And what's your marketing strategy for the pest control?
All right. So this we'll rewind a little bit. So if I could do your wind mitt, I might as well do your home inspection, right? So I want you to think that through. Home inspectors weren't licensed to do wind mitts in the beginning. So I stole the home inspections from home inspectors because I was a contractor who could do the wind mitt. So I'll do your wind mitt, your 4-point, and your home inspection. I got all that. That was not a thing in the beginning. Most people don't realize that. When I started doing it, it was like, well, you had to hire a contractor to do your wind mitt. You might need an electrician to do your 4-point. You might need the roofer for a roof cert, and then your home inspector does a home inspection. I'm like, no, you call me. I got this. So it only made sense after my buddy Bob, went to, for a couple of years, went to inspections with me. And I realized he was getting paid $85 for every inspection we did to do the WDO, pretty much. That was his basic rate at the time, quite a few years ago, obviously. And I realized how much money he was making. And he was making that money. And I'm like, well, why am I letting him have that money? Why don't I do that? So, as you know, I figured out how to get the license. I, went through everything I needed to do to get my license. Got it. And now I laugh because in the 3.5 years it took me to get my license from the day I decided, I paid him $186,000 in 3.5 years for my WDOs. In 3.5 years. So now I go, all right, 10 years later, how much money am I keeping? I'm keeping 100 plus every inspection for doing the WDO. Never mind that we got licensed so we can do your pest control, your general roaches and stuff like that, your ants. We can do your rodents. We take care of rodent problems. We see those all the time on home inspections in the attics. We'll give you a quote on that. We're happy to do it. We can take care of your lawn and your ornamental. So once we started getting a bunch of termite inspections, people were like, hey, I love the job you're doing. Can you do my pests? I will. So it only made sense to segue into that. And I have a separate director who runs that section for me.
So would you attribute that as your marketing strategy, is using the clientele and everything that you build with home inspections over to pest control? I mean, I guess that seems like the common the common denominator here.
It is, it's a common denominator, but it's also a tricky balance. You don't want to force people into going, "Hey, I want to take all your money." Um,
Hmm.
and I say this, you know, and I say this to home inspectors all the time. You can only upsell people so many times before they feel like they're being sold. So we just say, "Hey, if you need it, we're happy to help." But we always recommend you get other quotes. Again, that honor thing, like, "Hey, get another quote." Great. If we do a great job, you like what we do. And some people are like, "No, I want you." Other people are like, "Oh, I'll get other quotes." Other people are like, "Oh, maybe I'll call you." So, but it gives us that, it allows us to save that effort because we already have that relationship with the client. And once we have the
Hmm.
relationship and they like us, it's an easy sell.
Fast forward now, you've had the pest control. Obviously, you started in the insurance inspection. You started in contracting. You, you did the home inspections. Now you're doing the pest control. And now you're starting a roofing company. So now you're doing this. Why now a roofing company? And what's this new venture all about? What's your marketing strategy for this?
So, yeah, so the roofing is the same thing. We know everybody needs roofs. Again, we get tired of roofers that do a crappy job, and I know I can give you better service. I just told you a story earlier where better service than most of them do. They don't tell you when they're showing up. They don't. They leave a mess. The guys are there for 3 or 4 days, and they never tell them when they're done. And we tell you every step of the way. We're going to communicate. We're great at communication, and that's our office organization stuff that does that. We set up systems for it. So the roofing thing is, it makes sense because once they trust us, they're willing to trust us, more with their roof. And as long as we're not there at the home inspection trying to sell them the roof, we're good with that. Now that I will remind you, they are separate companies. There's some legality there where we say, okay, yes, I'm a licensed roofer and I could sell your roof and inspect the roof, but as a home inspector, you can't make money off of what you're on a component that you inspect in the house that's part of the home inspection.
Hmm.
So it is a separate company. But again, I put the right person in place. Like I have somebody who's running that for me. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm the contractor, but they are the ones that are like, hey, no, I want to grow this with you. So by having them do that, they're pushing a lot of stuff and helping me.
Is this one easier or harder than your past two?
So far, it's been easier.
Why?
I think it's because of this trust factor. I think we've spent so many years with people learning to trust us and knowing you look at obviously our Google reviews, things like that. People go, wow, I can trust these guys. So when you're going to throw down 20K on a roof, you'd rather work with even if they're more, work with somebody you trust than somebody you're going to go, oh, you can fire your pest guy any day. You can't fire your roofer in the middle of the job. You can't do it. So you better trust them. So I think that's
Hmm.
what helps us.
Is this the final form of your empire,
No.
or are there more service lines coming?
There's a few more things coming. I'll point out that I know you probably know this, but it may not pay attention. It's actually Honor Roofing and Construction because I did get my GC license at the same time, and so my GC and my roofing are under a separate company. So we actually have people that want to work with us to do bathroom remodels and kitchen remodels, which is really where I started Honor Construction.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about like your history, how you started the pest control company, the roofing company, kind of like your marketing philosophy and how you've grown those businesses. Do you think everything in terms of what you've done and how you're still going about it is repeatable by somebody else? Can somebody else do what you're doing?
Yeah.
What would you say to that particular person if you had to give them like, hey, this is the way I go about my particular marketing? What would be that one thing you would say?
Marketing never stops. Everything you do is marketing. Everything you do is marketing. Whether you want to believe it or not, everything you do is marketing. How you answer the phone. Your phone system is your marketing. I mean, if you have a crappy phone system or you're not, that's marketing. If your vehicles are marketing. Everything you do, uniforms. I mean, people. I can't even tell people how important it is to look the part before you even do the part. And that includes uniforms. That as you know, we show up, and the impression it makes when especially on a big house, and somebody's spending $1 million plus on a house. We show up in 3 or 4 vehicles, and 4, 6 people get out, and they're all wearing the same khaki pants. They're all wearing a blue polo, They all have tool belts on them. Somebody's got infrared, somebody's grabbing the ladder, somebody's grabbing a sewer scope. And we explain to them what's going to happen and how this is going to work. Hey, Mike's going to do the sewer scope. Chris is going to start on the outside. Jim's going on the inside, and he's going to do your dock and seawall. He's doing your pool. To them, it looks professional. And once you've already won. They trust everything you say you're going to do because you have a plan, and it just looks like it should.
Do you feel, and some people listening to this may not know, but that what you have repeatedly mentioned to me is you're not in a huge market, right? You're not in Miami, you're not in Orlando, you're not in Tampa, you're not in Las Vegas, you're not in Atlanta, you're in Brevard County, one particular county known as the Space Coast, and your primary areas like Cocoa Beach, Melbourne. So knowing that, what do you think sets you apart from the big brands? And are you nervous if a big brand or somebody comes in with a bunch of money that they're wanting to spend to capture the Space Coast?
I would say they got a lot of catching up to do. There's been, big brands that have come in here and just they don't get a foothold like I have. There's always the niche market for somebody. They're going to be, there's always somebody that doesn't like what we do. They're afraid of what we do, or they don't like us because we pissed off their realtor at some point. But every realtor in our area knows they're going to see us again. So we're just too big not to. And I say that as in, like, we pretty much dominate the market in our area. And there's some great inspectors in my area. And like I said, I refer to them, I help them, they help me. I've worked with Sean. Sean's worked with me. You've worked with Sean. Just one. Phil is another one. So there's some great inspectors in my area, and they will have agents and customers that are loyal to them to the end, and that's cool. But if you want to come in, you're going to have to spend a lot of time and money on marketing if you're a big company and want to take what I have. There are companies that, they scratch the surface, but they, again, run out of steam because you either A, run out of time or you run out of money. So you only have so much time, you only have so much money. So if you want to market right, you got everything's marketing, everything. You know that a lot of our vans, we drive around in a lot of the little vans, Ford Transit Connects. And I put a ladder rack on each one and put a big-ass ladder on top. And everybody's like, oh, none of the guys really use it. You know that. You hated using those stupid ladders. But they're there for a reason. Because people look at it and go, wow, they're here to get on the roof. And I'll tell you, there was a guy in my area years ago who drove around in a Prius when gas prices were $4 plus a gallon. And he could fit the 17-foot multifold. He could fit the 13-foot in there. He had everything he needed in that thing. But one thing he said to me, and it still rings true to this day, when he'd pull up, half the time they'd go, hey, do you need to borrow a ladder? I'm like, your first impression is gone. They don't even think you brought a ladder.
That's so sad.
You know what I mean? And you go, dude, if you're going to be like you showing up to a market space without a computer, come on, that ain't going to work,
Oh, no.
You need to borrow a computer, So that ladder it proves to everybody we're there to do the job. Do we use them that often? No.
I want to segue with a few remaining questions that I have. So we could say these are philosophical questions, big questions. So I hope you're prepared for the answer.
We'll see.
I'm kidding. It's not that crazy. If you were to start all over, if there was anything you were to change or tell yourself sooner that you wish you would have learned or knew sooner, what would that be?
Don't be afraid to trust other people to help.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't do it all alone. You can try, but you get tired, you get burned out. You have to trust other people, and you have to hire the right people. So as you know, and I know this one guy you're not too fond of, but Gary Vernecki would say, hire fast, but fire faster. So when they're not working, let them go. If they're just let them go. It's time to move on. I don't worry about that because I don't fire anybody except for you. But you were the last person I fired. My team fires people now. Mm-hmm. And anyway, he ain't gonna work at boss, man. He's got to go. Okay.
No. Okay. So the second question I was going to ask, which actually you might have just answered, which is what advice do you have someone who's maybe trying to start or build their business or build their empire or start a few other companies? Like, what advice would you give them?
So the biggest thing I do, and I still do it to this day, and I've done Facebook Lives, and if you watch some of them, is like when you get slow, You're not slow. You're just not doing inspections. You got to do something else. So learn a new skill, get additional licensing, whatever that looks like, but work on growing. You cannot just go, if you're going to take the back seat, take it easy and think, oh, well, December's slow. No, December's slow, not for inspections. You should be doing other stuff, whatever that looks like. Not a great time for in-person marketing either, by the way, unless you're going to Christmas parties, but go to the Christmas parties, yeah.
Christmas parties are fun.
Yeah.
I like those.
Well, we get invited to them. I don't go to a lot of them, but go to them if you can.
I've learned some big nuggets from this, and at least for me, my big takeaway, and I hope what a lot of people take away from this, is that a lot of people may think of the marketing as the advertising or the web design or the SEO or whatever else. But I think one of the things that we learned is the marketing is everything. The marketing is your vehicle. It's how you look. It's how you act. It's how you react when your team member passes out and has to go to the emergency room and that you're still thinking about the client. So, Dad, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you sharing the real deal about how you started your empire and how you're growing it. And for those people that are listening to this, I hope this helped and hope this lit a fire for you guys to not just think about the advertising, the SEO, or the emails, but the whole deal, the whole thing, and that you're constantly marketing. So if you got value from this, be sure to subscribe to the podcast, drop a review, and check out the more episodes. John, Dad, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Alpha Marketing. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with other business owners and marketers. Your support enables us to continue bringing you actionable advice and the tools you need to thrive. Join us next time for more insights with Aaron Shishilla, and keep striving to be the alpha in your market.